A couple of years ago, I rented a small house. I lived alone, and my house had a small front and backyard in a pretty busy neighborhood. I worked not that far away, about a 10-minute drive from my place. One night, I arrived home from work like usual. I went on my phone all the time, and I remember using it after arriving back home. So, as the night went on, I found myself relaxing on the couch and watching TV. This lasted for several hours, and was probably my favorite activity to do on a random night without anything going on. I would just channel surf and watch the shows or movies or whatever that were on. A couple of times I got up to use the bathroom that night or to go to the kitchen, and at one point I went down to the basement to get laundry. When it got late, at about 11 o'clock, I was tired and decided to go to bed and call it a night. I hadn't been on my phone in a few hours. I assumed that it was right next to me on the couch though, which is where it usually would be when I was there. My couch was very comfortable, and I also had a few blankets on it. I looked around though and could not find my phone. I quickly became frustrated. I picked up all the blankets on the couch and shook them. I expected my phone to fall out, but it didn't. This had happened before, but every time before my phone had been there. So I started looking through the couch cushions. I thought that maybe it had fallen between them, but when I looked, I still couldn't find it. I was like 90% sure that I had left my phone on the couch, so I didn't know what was going on. I started to try and remember the last time that I had used my phone. I couldn't remember exactly when, but it was for sure at my house, and probably at around 7 p.m. or so when I was still on the couch. And I hadn't left my house at all the whole night, so I knew it had to be inside. I started walking around the living room, looking on the floor and on the coffee table and everywhere. My place was not that messy, so I was getting more and more confused. Where could it be? I remember I started exclaiming to myself, "Where is my phone?" in disbelief. I hadn't remembered taking my phone with me when I went to the kitchen or basement, but I guess it was possible, so I decided to try to retrace my steps anyways. I mean, it had to be somewhere. So I started looking all around the house, and my place really was not that big. It was just one level and then a basement. There was the living room, a small dining room area, kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, and closet on the first floor. Then an unfinished basement with laundry and another bathroom was downstairs. I first went downstairs and looked around. The phone was not there. Then I went back upstairs. I looked in the kitchen, dining room, and bathroom. Nothing. I hadn't been in my bedroom yet, but I went in anyways, and it wasn't there either. Then I went back out into the living room, confused as can be. When I looked back to the couch, there it was, my phone. It was just sitting there sort of half covered by a blanket, but visible. I felt crazy. Was I really that insane that I somehow had not noticed this before? I knew for a fact that I had looked there. I just picked up my phone, shook my head, and then went into the kitchen to put my cup in the dishwasher before heading to bed. But when I got in the kitchen though, I noticed something. The back door to the house was unlocked, and it also looked like it wasn't closed all the way. Like it was mostly closed, but you had to really push it to make sure that the door shut completely. When I saw this, my eyes must have got real big. I went over, pushed the door shut, and locked it. I knew that I had the door closed before. I rarely used it. Then the crazy realization hit me. What if somebody had been inside the house with me? What if they had took my phone, and for whatever reason, when they realized I was looking for it, they put it back? Maybe when I was in the basement, they returned it. It sounds crazy, but I knew the door had been closed all the way before, and how else do you explain it? I looked through my entire house, and nobody was inside. So at that point, I went to bed. I don't live in that house anymore, but the experience still makes me wonder. I never saw or heard anyone, and why would they take my phone and then give it back? Maybe they could not unlock it with my password. Maybe they thought I would find them. I don't know, I'm just guessing. But where were they hiding? My bedroom or the closet possibly. I know it might still sound crazy, but I know I searched everywhere that night. About 5 years ago, I worked in an office building in the city. I lived in an apartment building pretty close by, and so I would walk to and from work every day. This was good for me because the walk would be easier in my opinion than driving. Parking in the city can be difficult, and my office did have a garage, but you had to pay for the spot, which was stupid. Also, I hated driving in the city, and the walk was only like 20 minutes and the exercise was nice. so I would have the routine of making the walk every day. The city was usually pretty busy, with lots of people on the sidewalks and cars on the street. It was also common for me to stop along the trip to get coffee or sometimes some food on the way back. One time I arrived back home from work to my apartment only to realize that I did not have my phone. I wasn't sure exactly where it was. The possibilities were that I had lost it on the walk home or that I had forgotten it at work. I was hoping that it was the latter. For the rest of that night, I just went without my phone. I knew there was nothing I could really do. If I had lost my phone walking, then I was pretty much screwed, because somebody would have surely picked it up. So the next morning, I got to work hoping that my phone would still be at my office desk. Unfortunately, it wasn't. I was very disappointed. So I logged onto my work computer and was wondering if I needed to buy a new phone that day after work. But when I logged onto my email, I saw something. There was an email from this woman named Emily who I did not know. I clicked on it and her email had her picture and she said that she had found my phone. In her email, she said that she found the phone on the ground and that she had it with her and wanted to give it back to me. I was really happy to hear that. Emily said that she worked that day and was busy, but I could come over that night to her house and pick up the phone. I responded to her email and said that I could come by that night. We emailed back and forth a little bit and arranged for me to pick up the phone at 8 p.m. and she gave me her address. So after work, I went back home and then later on drove to the house. I had to write down the directions to get there because I did not have my phone, of course. But when I finally arrived, I realized that I was not in the best of neighborhoods. It looked kind of sketchy, but whatever. I figured it wasn't that big of a deal. So I got out of my car and I walked up to the house. It was a smaller, old-looking 2-story house. It looked similar to most of the places in the neighborhood. After I walked up to the door, I knocked on it. I was right on time as to when I was supposed to arrive. I looked around though, and none of the lights appeared to be on inside the house. This confused me a little, but overall, I didn't give it that much thought. After about a minute, I finally heard somebody approaching the door from inside. When it opened, I expected to see the woman who had emailed me, but I did not. I saw a man there who was a bigger-looking guy with a neck beard and was balding. He invited me to come inside the house. I said that maybe I had the wrong address and I was there to pick up my cell phone. I added that a woman named Emily had emailed me. The guy said that Emily was his wife and she was inside and I could come in. Feeling better, I entered the house and went inside. It seemed like most of the lights inside were off for some reason. There were just a few dimly lit lamps around here and there. Overall, the house was not very nice. It was messy and cluttered inside. The man led me into the kitchen where all the lights were off. He told me to have a seat and I sat down at the table. Then he said he would get his wife and let her know that I was there. I said okay and he walked off. I sat there and was confused as to what was going on. For the next couple of minutes, I became more and more uncomfortable. I just wanted to run out of there. I had a bad feeling. And if Emily knew that I was coming over to get my phone at the agreed time, why would she not be there? What was she doing? I would have hoped that I didn't even have to come in the house and she could just hand me the phone and I could be on my way. After sitting in the decrepit kitchen for like 5 minutes with no signs of Emily, I thought about getting up to investigate. But that's when I heard footsteps coming back towards me. The man with the neck beard was back. He told me that Emily was actually in the basement and I would have to go down there to get my phone. Then the man simply just walked away out of the room. I wasn't able to ask him why because he walked off so fast, but this was seeming way too sketchy. I got up and instead of looking around for the basement, I just left. I mean, why would I be forced to go down into the basement of this sketchy old house? Was Emily so important that she couldn't simply just give me the phone? Or the more important question, did Emily even exist? I walked to the front door and left. Then I ran from my car and drove back home. The next day at work, I emailed Emily again. I told her what had happened and said that it seemed really sketchy. I told her that I really needed my phone though and asked if she could please meet me at a public location. I even offered to pay. I said, if this is an inconvenience to you, I will pay you. She never responded. I ended up going to the Verizon store after work and got a new cell phone. I'm glad I didn't go down into the basement of that house. I think that the guy with the neck beard is the one who found my phone. He probably created the fake Emily account. That's why he never responded to my last email. What I am curious about is how he got my email. If he was somehow able to get into my phone, it all makes sense. But I had it locked and my password was pretty secure. Either way, I'm glad that I did not stay in that creepy house any longer. This is something really crazy that happened back when I was in college. I was in graduate school and my best friend Paige and I would hang out all the time. We did not live together, but we each had roommates who we lived with. I rented a house with my roommate Rebecca, who was also a good friend and was in my program for school. The house was typical for college. It had a small front yard and was in a neighborhood right near campus with a lot of other houses. On this night, Rebecca was gone, and Paige was over at my house hanging out. We would be over at each other's places almost on a nightly basis. I believe it was a Friday and we didn't have classes or anything the next day, so we stayed up kind of late, and eventually Paige left to go back to her apartment. I remember that after she had left, I started getting ready to go to sleep. Shortly before I did though, I got a call from Paige's roommate Presley. I was wondering why she was calling me, especially so late, so I answered. It was Paige speaking, and I answered. It was Paige speaking, and she asked me if she had forgotten her phone at my place. Apparently, Paige could not find her cell phone anywhere, so she was using her roommates to call me. I went out into the living room where we had been hanging out most of the time. While still on the phone, I began looking. I was not seeing it anywhere though. Paige was telling me as I was looking that she had it at my place and remembered using it there. Then she said that she didn't use it on the way back and didn't have it at her place. So it was logical to believe that it was at my place. Only then did I have the thought to actually call the phone. It was late at night and I was tired, I guess. So I hung up with Paige and then called her phone. I was hoping and expecting to hear it ringing or vibrating across the room or something. But to my surprise, I heard it pick up. When her phone picked up, at first there was silence on the other end. After a few seconds of me being too surprised to speak, I finally did. I said, "Hello?" There was nothing at first, but I soon heard breathing on the other end. I said, "This is my friend's phone and I think she lost it. Did you find it somewhere?" After a few more seconds of silence, I finally heard a man's voice say, "Yeah." Then he said, "I'll bring you the phone." I said, "Actually, it's not my phone. You could bring it to my friend." He said, "No, I'll bring it to you." I was just happy that someone had the phone and was willing to bring it back. I gave him my address and then he hung up. So at that point, I immediately called Paige back via her roommate's phone. When I did, I told her what happened. Paige was so confused because she didn't know how some random guy had her phone. And now that I was thinking about it, I didn't either. I mean, she had her phone inside of my house. I knew that for a fact. Then she simply left and drove straight home without stopping anywhere. In my mind, the only explanation was that she either dropped her phone getting in or out of her car, so it possibly had been on the ground on my street or in her parking lot. Either way, the guy was supposedly on his way to bring it back now. So Paige said that she was on her way back to my place and started heading over. About 10 minutes later, she arrived. The man had not yet. We hung out in the living room wondering when he would arrive. After like 45 minutes, I called Paige's phone again. He didn't answer though. We were worried that he was not going to return the phone anymore, and unfortunately, I didn't have her location stalked or anything like that. Sometime later, I got up and walked over to the front of the house. I started looking out of the window just out of curiosity. By now, it was very late at night. But then I saw something. There was a man walking down the sidewalk. He kind of stopped in front of our house. I ducked down, but secretly kept watching. The guy started to walk into my front yard, which was very small, but had some bushes and trees. He kind of paced around a bit. Then he started walking towards the doors. I knew this had to be the guy with Paige's phone, but he didn't go to the front door. Instead, he walked past it and then walked along the front of the house in the yard. By now, Paige was over at the other window and watching as well. The man went around towards the back of the house and we were very confused. We were also kind of creeped out. He could clearly see where the front door was, so why was he going around back? We moved to the back of the house to see where this guy would go. He ended up sort of looking in a back window and then walked around the backyard a little bit. Then he made his way to the front of the house and finally went to the front door. He then knocked on it. I went over and nervously opened the door, but when I answered, I opened it just a crack. The guy said hi and said that he had the phone. As friendly as I could, pretending I did not just see him creep around my house, I said thank you very much. I then told him he could give me the phone and I held out my hand. He seemed to reluctantly give me the phone. Then, as I took it, he asked if he could come inside quick. I asked why, and he said that he needed to use the bathroom. I told him sorry, but ours wasn't working, which I made up on the spot. It really did work, but I just didn't want this guy coming in after his sketchy behavior. The guy didn't leave right away though. He said, "Could I just come in for a minute anyways?" I said, "No, sorry." Then I closed the door and instantly locked it. It might have seemed rude, but I wouldn't have acted that way had he not been so weird. We watched the guy standing around for another minute or so. Then he walked around the front yard for a while before finally leaving. We were so creeped out that Paige ended up staying over at my place and slept on the couch that night. We figured that the guy saw Paige's phone after she probably dropped it on the street or something. But why he was so sketchy, I don't know. The rest of my time living in that house, I thankfully never saw him again. Not too long ago, I got home from work one night and went inside. I live in an apartment complex. There are a few buildings in the complex and it's fairly new. The place has parking garages, but I don't pay extra for a space. Instead, I just park in the outside parking lot that the complex has. There's a lot of spaces, but it still ends up filling up a lot. So I typically park kind of far away, but near the side door from my building. So I just get out of my car, walk along the sidewalk for a short ways, and then enter the side door and go upstairs. The sidewalk goes around the whole complex, and many people walk their dogs on it. So on this night in particular, I had stayed kind of late at work. I got back to the apartment at a little after 11 p.m. By now, it was very quiet and nobody else was outside. I left my car, walked to my building, went inside, and then went up to my apartment on the 3rd floor, only to realize that I didn't have my phone. I looked around but couldn't find it. However, I quickly realized that I probably had just forgotten my phone in my car. Many times it would fall out of my right pocket and onto the seat of my car. The seat and my phone were both a dark color, so I would often forget it. This is something that had happened several times before. So I was slightly annoyed, but really it was not a big deal. I left my apartment and walked back downstairs and out the side door to the parking lot. When I got back to my car, I opened the door to find my phone on the front seat. I breathed a sigh of relief and then picked it up. However, when I turned to walk back to the side door of the apartment building, I now saw that there was a man standing there. He was just kind of hanging out right in front of the door. I didn't know where he had come from, but I started to walk back. However, as I walked on the sidewalk, the man did not move in any direction. He was wearing a hood and sort of pacing around a little bit, but not really going that far in either direction, and his overall appearance and demeanor seemed sketchy. To avoid him, I decided to turn to the left and enter through the front door of the building instead. This was not a big deal, and I was not at the intersection of the sidewalk yet, so it was fine. When I got there, I went to the left instead of going straight and headed for the front door. The guy was still there in about the same spot. I veered left and began walking towards the front door of the apartment building, and as I did, I sort of saw out of the corner of my eye the guy start to walk in my direction. Now, he was a long ways away, but it gave me a bad feeling. So I kept walking, and when I got closer to the front door, I could hear the man walking on the sidewalk behind me. Now I had to make a decision. I could go in the front door and have this man possibly enter right behind me. What if he was a sketchy guy and I didn't want him in the building? I decided not to enter but just walk around to see what would happen. I went past the front door and soon heard the man pass by it as well. Then I walked along the front of my building. This would connect with another sidewalk going around the whole complex. As I walked down that, the man trailed me at probably 40 feet behind. At one point, I went down this sidewalk that just kind of looped back to the original one. It was a test to see if the guy was following me or not. When I did, he did the same thing. Now I was really creeped out. I went around the building and was now behind it. There was no door to go inside there from my building because it was actually a different building between and my key wouldn't unlock it. So I kept walking, now going faster. When I made it to the corner, I rounded it quickly. Then I just went for it. I took off running and sprinted a good 50 feet until I figured that the man would be rounding the corner. Then I stopped. I heard him coming around the corner, and he was now almost 100 feet back. With this distance, I decided to enter the original side door that I had wanted to go in the first place, as it was now very close by. I went to the door, quickly entered, and got inside. When I did, I looked out to see the man now full-on sprinting towards me. He got to the door as I walked up the stairs, and I heard him trying to open it. He didn't say anything, but he banged on the door a few times. I went upstairs and got back to my apartment. I had never seen the guy before, and I don't think he lived there. I did wonder, though, if he was possibly a resident who just forgot his keys or something. But if that was the case, he used the most sketchy method possible to try to get back in. Why follow someone in the shadows at 11 o'clock at night and try to sneak in? I think he was probably there for no good. Either way, I haven't seen him since. A few years ago, I attended a sports game and ended up forgetting my phone there in the stadium. I just know that when I got back, I couldn't find my phone. I had lost it and didn't have any idea as to where it was at first. Now, to be honest with you, I'm not even 100% sure that I did lose it at the sports game, but that was the only thing that made sense to me. I know I had it at the game, and when I got back, I did not. I don't recall using it at all on the way home. So I live in an apartment and live by myself. It's maybe 15 minutes from the sports stadium where the game was. After losing my phone, I was devastated. However, I figured that there was nothing that I could do. I actually called the sports stadium, and they do have a lost and found there. However, after describing the phone and where I was sitting, they said they unfortunately did not have it. The next morning, I was lost without my phone. Like most people, I use it every day for almost everything. So I started looking online for a new one. I didn't want to just buy a brand new phone with how expensive it is, but I also knew that I couldn't go that long without a cell phone. Now, that night, I still hadn't bought a new one as I had been doing research into deals online. I had made up my mind that I would just cut my losses and get a new phone the next day, because I didn't really see any deals that were that great. I would go to my service provider and tell them what happened. However, at like 11 p.m. that night, there was a random knock at my front door. I went over to the door wondering who was there. At my apartment, I really never got knocks on the door, so this was already strange, but with it being so late at night, it made it even more weird. I went over to the door and looked through the peephole to see that nobody was there. So then I carefully opened my door. When I did not see anybody in the hallway, but I did see a phone on the ground at my doormat. It was my cell phone. It seemed like a miracle, and I couldn't believe it. I picked it up and took it inside. The phone was just how I left it. Somebody must have found it and brought it back to me. I didn't know who it was, but I was very grateful. That is, until the strange things started happening. I went onto my phone and saw that some things were different. Like, for example, there were some new photos and videos in my camera roll. There were a bunch of pictures of the street at night, and the videos appeared to be taken by somebody just walking along the street at night. I couldn't see anybody in the videos though, or the pictures, so I didn't know who it was who had found my phone. And then there were some either screenshots or downloaded photos from the 1990s live-action Ninja Turtles movie. It was really strange. Then there was this phone tracking app that I didn't have before. I didn't know what it was, so I deleted it. But that wasn't it. Starting that very same night, I started getting a bunch of random phone calls. At first, I did not answer because I didn't recognize the numbers, but then they called again and again. I eventually picked up, only to be hung up on. And it wasn't just one number, there were several different numbers calling me. I would answer sometimes and either be hung up on or just hear silence on the other end. Sometimes they would leave messages too, but the messages would either just be long periods of silence or be just breathing noises. It was really strange. I started to block all the numbers. There were probably 10 of them in total, and it took like a week of blocking to get them all. Eventually, it finally ended. I'm still wondering who brought my phone back. I mean, I'm grateful that they did, but also, what did they do? Was it all just a prank, or was somebody trying to scare me? I think they got my address and stuff because they were probably able to get into my phone. My passcode was 1234, but I have since changed it. I went to a concert with a couple of my friends around 2 weeks ago. Sometime during it, I dropped my phone, and I didn't notice until I got home. Luckily, I could track the location on my Apple Watch that I got as a present from my roommate. Strangely, it tracked to a park 5 miles away from the house. When my friends and I went to the location, we found the phone. That's where things went bad. I had multiple text messages from my roommate, as if while I didn't have the phone, someone had a text conversation. Here's what I found when I opened up the thread. I texted my roommate saying, "Hey, are you home right now?" My roommate Jack texted back, "Yeah, are you coming home now?" I texted him yes, but I also told him I was hammered and couldn't remember our address. Jack marveled at how drunk I must have been and sent our address. This whole text message thread happened when I already had lost my phone. My blood ran cold after reading this. I was completely worried about my roommate, but I searched through the rest of the phone. There were 5 pictures taken around 30 minutes after the texts were made, all of our house. I immediately told my roommate what was happening and that I didn't send those texts. There were other texts as well to a number I didn't recognize. My number sent the photos and the other one said, "Thanks." After I got home, we locked all the doors and secured the house. Nothing interesting happened in the first few hours, but then something was off. Our dog Izzy randomly started staring right at the front door. For 10 minutes she blankly stared at the door and tried to sniff under it. Thankfully, our condo has security cameras, so I opened the app. There was nothing on the back side of the house or the front side. It was like Izzy was smelling something though. After another hour of scared planning in case something happened, I decided to check what Izzy was smelling since nothing was captured on the security cameras. We kind of live in a city-suburb mixed type of town, so it would be safe to go out and check. The second I opened the front door, I saw it. A letter with my name on it, and taped to it was a piece of chocolate. The letter read, "What a clumsy mistake. Should have held on to it better." And on the back it said, "We know where you are." I didn't even touch the chocolate. I just stood there staring at the note, heart pounding in my ears. I called Jack out and showed him. He didn't say anything for a minute. Then he said, "We're calling the cops." They came about 20 minutes later. I showed them everything, the texts, the photos, and the note. They asked the usual questions. I told them that I lost the phone at the concert. They said they would investigate and told us to keep the doors locked and lights on. That was it. The next night, we crashed early. Nothing happened. The night after, Izzy started growling. Not barking, but growling, low and steady. I looked out the window but didn't see anything. I checked the outside cameras again. Still nothing. But the growling wouldn't stop. Then, around 2:30 a.m., my phone lit up with a new message from an unknown number. It said, "Don't forget to lock the upstairs window." I froze. Jack was still awake, and we ran upstairs towards the window. We could see it from the top of the stairs. The window at the end of the hallway was open, and the curtain was blowing in the wind. We hadn't opened the window for weeks, and now it was open. I don't know if it was the right move or not, but Jack and I abandoned our house and left it all empty for the intruder as we sprinted out the front door while calling the cops. We waited in the park area across the street for them to show up, but of course, when they searched the house, nobody was found. This time we were able to show them footage of the intruder on our outside cameras of him leaving our house, but they were dressed in all black and it was hard to tell much from the video. Nothing has happened in the 2 days since that incident, but we've been very aware of our surroundings and locking all the windows and doors in the house, praying that the intruder doesn't come back. I know this might sound crazy, but this happened a few weeks ago. I still don't really know what to think. Me, my mom, and dad woke up and came downstairs at around the same time one morning like we usually do on weekends. Everything seemed normal. Then my dad stopped at the kitchen counter and said, "Whose phone is this?" There was a phone sitting right there. None of us had ever seen it before. It was a newer Android, black case, no scratches, and looked almost new. We all use iPhones, and nobody in our house uses Android. My first thought that maybe somebody left it there the day before, but we hadn't had anyone over, not recently. We'd just been working and staying in. We asked each other, obviously, but none of us had seen it before. I picked it up and tried to open it, but it was locked with a passcode. No facial recognition, no fingerprint. Just a standard PIN lock screen. No notifications were showing, no missed calls or texts. We checked the entire house. Nothing was missing, nothing moved or broken. No sign of forced entry and no windows open. The doors had been locked all night. Our security camera at the front door didn't show anything, but we didn't have cameras in the back. We figured maybe it was dropped by somebody passing by and somehow ended up inside. But how? We tried calling the number from another phone, and it went straight to voicemail. A generic male voice, nothing identifying. No name, no message, just leave a message after the tone. We then tried to look up the number. Google gave us a basic result, Washington State area code registered to a man in his 80s. We didn't know anyone from Washington. We live in the Midwest and have never been there before. Later, I plugged it into a portable charger because the battery had died, thinking maybe we could turn it in somewhere. As soon as it powered back up, it buzzed. A notification popped up on the lock screen, but not a normal one. It was a text message which didn't make much sense. It contained hieroglyphics, and I couldn't decipher the message from it, but there was a link at the bottom of the message as well. That really freaked me out. My parents were both standing there. None of us knew what it meant, but we were not clicking that link. We called the local police station. They took a report, but they basically said unless it was tied to a crime, there was nothing much they could do. They took the phone and said they'd hold it for 90 days. If nobody claimed it, we could have it back if we wanted. We told them we were not going to take it back, and that was the end of that. Overall, a strange and creepy experience. Last night, a friend dragged me out to this local bar downtown. I didn't really feel like going, but he said there was a good band playing. We got there just in time for the opener. The place was kind of packed, but we managed to find a small table near the back. After a couple of beers, I reached into my pocket to check the time and realized that my phone wasn't there. At first, I figured that it probably slipped out at the table, so I checked under my chair around the floor. Nothing. I asked my friend if he'd seen it, but he hadn't. So I retraced my steps. I checked the bar and asked the bartender. I looked in the bathrooms and even asked the people sitting near us, but nobody had seen it. Eventually, I borrowed my friend's phone to call my number, hoping that maybe somebody picked it up. It rang twice, and someone answered. At first, they didn't say anything. I was about to talk when I heard this weird giggle. It was low and rough, and I'm pretty sure it was a male's voice. It lasted maybe 2 seconds, and then they hung up. I tried calling back right away. It rang, then went straight to voicemail. I kept trying for a while, maybe 10 or 12 times, but got nothing. I had this cold feeling in my chest. Something about the laugh didn't feel right. It wasn't like someone found it and was being funny. It sounded creepy and sinister. I just gave up and tried to enjoy the rest of the night, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I kept replaying the moment I'd last used it. I remembered checking the time before leaving the house, maybe an hour before the show, and I used it to walk to the bar to message some friends. I was sure that I had put it in my pocket after that. At around midnight, we called it a night. My friend offered to let me crash at his place, but I just wanted to go home. I went home and went into my room, and there it was, my phone sitting on the nightstand. I didn't know what to think. At first, I figured maybe I had just imagined taking it with me that night, but I remembered turning off the lights with it in my hand and checking the time I messaged my friends confirmed that it had been out with me. I checked the call log. Sure enough, there was the missed calls from my friend's number and the one answered call 12 seconds long. That was it. No other activity. No texts or outgoing calls. The battery was still nearly full. I couldn't sleep until I checked my entire place for if somebody was hiding in there, but it was clear. I don't even know how they got inside. I kept replaying that laugh. Today, I changed all my passwords just in case. I've been checking the door locks constantly on my house. I even bought a cheap camera. I don't know who was in my house while I was gone, or why they didn't take the phone instead of bringing it back the way that they did. It was just after 9 p.m. on a Thursday. My wife and I had finished dinner and were cleaning up the kitchen. Our house sits at the edge of a long stretch of farmland, nothing but open fields for miles behind us. In front is a double highway, and on the other side of that is a main road into town with a few fast food places, a gas station, and some strip malls. That's about it. We were just about to settle in for the night when someone knocked on the door. I peeked through the side window. There was a man standing there with his hoodie up. He looked like he was in his 30s maybe, and I didn't recognize him. We don't get visitors here. No one comes down our road unless they're lost or have a reason. I opened the door halfway but kept the screen shut. He said, "Hey, sorry to bother you. I lost my phone. I was at the gas station and used Find My iPhone, and it says that it's here, like right around the back corner of your house." I didn't respond right away. I was trying to understand what he was saying. He went on, "I think maybe somebody took it and dumped it, or maybe it's still tracking weird, but it says it's right around here." Now, here's the thing. The gas station he was talking about is across the highway and at least a 10-minute walk. No sidewalk, just ditches and brush. There's no reason his phone would be anywhere near our place. I told him that I hadn't seen a phone and I was pretty sure it wasn't here. He kept looking past me towards the side of the house. He asked again, "Mind if I just check around the back quick?" I said no. I told him I'd look around myself and if we saw anything, I'd leave it on the front porch. He stood there a second too long. He looked like he wanted to argue, but then he said, "All right, man, thanks," and then walked off. I watched him go. He didn't walk towards the gas station. He went towards the field next to our house. There's nothing out there but open land and a small tree line. I waited until he was out of sight, then locked everything up. I checked the back with a flashlight. No phone, nothing. My wife was nervous, and I was trying not to be. About 20 minutes later, I heard movement. No footsteps, but like something brushing the side of the house. I turned off the lights and looked out the back window. Nothing at first. Then I saw it. A shadow crouched low near the back corner, right where he said his phone was. I didn't open the door. I called the sheriff's office. A deputy showed up first, maybe 10 minutes later. When he pulled into the driveway, the guy bolted from the back and ran off into the field. The deputy chased him a bit, but lost him in the dark. They brought out another unit to sweep the area and didn't find him. What got me was this. There was no phone ping. They checked with dispatch, no missing phone report, no pings registered in the area. Whatever that guy was doing, he wasn't looking for a phone. I still think about it sometimes. What in the world was he doing? And if I'd opened the door wider, would he have tried something? We put cameras up after that, and motion lights too. No one's come knocking since. When I was still living with my parents, something happened that I still can't explain. It's been years now, but it still bothers me, even though I've tried to just forget about it. At the time, my boyfriend, now my husband, and I were watching my 2-year-old nephew while my parents were out. I was upstairs watching TV with my nephew, and my boyfriend went to the bathroom. I realized I needed to grab something from downstairs, so I went down quickly and threw my phone on the bed on the way. I remember it landing in the dead center of the mattress. I even thought, "Nice shot," to myself. I ran to get whatever it was and then went back upstairs. When I got into the room, my phone was gone. I checked the bed, nothing. I lifted the blankets and pulled the pillows off. I looked under the bed, between the mattress and the frame, and the phone was just gone. I called my boyfriend and we tore the room apart together. We looked in the closet, behind the dresser, under the bookshelf, even in the hallway in case it somehow slid or bounced. Nothing. It didn't make sense. We thought that maybe my nephew took it, but he never left the room, and I doubt he could have climbed up on the bed anyways. He was completely focused on the TV anyways, and it had been under 2 minutes. I never heard a sound, no footsteps, no doors opening, nothing that would suggest someone broke in and took it. Still, the neighborhood had a lot of break-ins, so it did cross our minds. But it didn't add up. How could somebody come in, grab only the phone, and leave with no sound, no mess, in less than 2 minutes? Over the years, I kept checking. Every time I was in that room, I'd go through it again. I'd move furniture, check inside drawers, crawl under the bed with a flashlight, and look everywhere. I even took the mattress off once. I checked the closet, the vent, the corners of the room. I looked everywhere. Years later, when my parents sold the house, we were cleaning it out. There were 2 alcoves above the closet in that room that we always stored bags in. Old clothes, decorations, things like that. We'd checked those before just to be safe. I decided to go through them one last time. I was pulling down bags from the back of one of the alcoves, stuff we hadn't touched in forever. Under a big black trash bag full of clothes, buried beneath maybe 5 other bags, I saw something wedged against the back wall. It was the case from the phone I lost. Just the case, with no phone inside. It was the same case, same color, and same scratch near the edge. It had no business being up there. We had checked that alcove every time we had searched. There was no way we missed it. It was way in the back, under stuff that hadn't been moved in years. I even asked my parents if they'd found it and just tossed it up there. They had no idea what I was talking about. I never found the actual phone.